Hi, everybody. I'm Elissa Malespina. I am the ISTE Library Network president, and I am coming to you tonight with an incredible webinar that I am so excited about called Fighting Back When Cuts Are Threatened, learning tips and tricks for how to fight back when you have your library, might be cut or a library program might be cut. And we at the ISTE Librarian Network are partnering with EveryLibrary and John for this incredible webinar. And we have a webinar series, which we'll talk more about later. But I'm going to let John introduce himself, and then we're going to get started because we want to get right into this topic.
Hi, folks. This is John Chrastka, Executive Director and co-founder of EveryLibrary. It's a real thrill to be here with Elissa tonight and the ISTE Librarians Network. This is the second of our From Advocacy to Activism webinar series. Elissa and I will be presenting tonight, as she said, on fighting back when cuts are threatened, and that's a really top-of-mind topic this time of the year for school library folks around the country. We're going to be talking in a way that is both about your own program and potentially for colleagues that you have around the country, just down the way at the next district, perhaps. We want to be able to help support you with information and ideas that are proven and to be able to help share out around the community of school librarians that you're not alone, that we're here to help you in a couple of different key ways and not just give you a toolkit and not just try and teach you a couple elevator speeches. So, Elissa, thanks for the chance to be able to do the second in our series, and I'm ready to roll when you are.
I'm ready to roll too. Let's see if we can get the screen share going. So you're going to tell me if you're not seeing it right if I do it. So let's see. We're going to go to share now, and I'm going to hit present. And are we at full screen, everybody?
I sincerely think so.
Okay. And then let me, oh, you know what? I'm going to escape for a second because I want to do this. Sorry, guys. We're going to say present to everybody, but then since you don't want to see us on the bottom of the page, I'm going to hide us because there's this new cool feature that we can hide participants in Google Hangouts. So now I'm going to present to everyone. Okay, now we should be good. You're seeing everything okay, John?
Yes, ma'am. Hit the second slide.
Awesome, second slide. Okay, so this is a little about us. I am Elissa Malespina. I am the president of the ISTE School Librarians Network. I am also a school librarian in Somerville, New Jersey, and I'm going to be speaking to you tonight from personal experiences that I have gone through with my son's school district, which is the South Orange Maplewood School District in New Jersey.
And then, as I said before, I'm John Chrastka, Executive Director for EveryLibrary. We're going to be talking about the dozens of school library activities, direct actions that we've done over the last year and a half or 2 years to help save school librarian jobs and help preserve school library budgets.
I'm so excited. So we'll be taking questions and comments via Twitter today. And you can tweet us using the ISTELib hashtag. We'll be going through those near the end of the presentation, and we'll have some time to answer any questions. You can get us at ISTELib, at EveryLibrary. We'll be looking sort of at both of those, but use the ISTELib hashtag because that's sort of what we'll be going through. Even if you don't have a question right now, because I know some people watch this at a different time, you can tweet John or I at any point, and I'm going to go back for a second just so you can see our Twitter handles, and we'll get back to you and answer your questions. Both of us are really active on Twitter, and we'll get back to you with any questions you may have.
Absolutely.
So use that hashtag, and then John, you can thank our sponsor.
For sure. Follett Learning, they have been the organization that's helped us start and power the SaveSchoolLibrarians.org initiative. They're sponsoring this webinar series with ISTE.
And Follett's been incredible for us. So they're helping us. So now it's time to tell my story, the South Orange Maplewood story. It happened in my son's school district and where I used to be a librarian. So these cuts were very personal to me. And I spent almost 2 years fighting against these cuts. What happened is they decided to cut both middle school librarians and a high school librarian, and they also cut all of the budget for all of the libraries in the district. So through a series of things that occurred that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, that you're going to learn about, I fought, and finally, after 2 long years, we got back both middle school librarians, we got back the high school librarian, and all libraries got a budget. But it was a hard and long process. So, you know, these tips that I'm talking to you about are ones that I'm giving you from personal experience and you know, things that I did and went back and reflected on to help others, because people have asked me about my stories. So I'm going to sort of tell my story. And then John, being the perfect person, is going to tell other tips and tricks too. So the first thing that we have to talk about is before cuts are even proposed, you need to sort of learn about these sort of different things. So you got to start paying attention to what's going on. You have to start advocating for yourself. You got to become that budget expert. You got to learn what's going on with the school budget. And you got to find your allies, people that are going to help you if you are ever in a situation where cuts will happen. So tonight I'm going to talk a little more in depth about these. So all of these little things that you're seeing here, you know, is right from, there was a school library journal just did a piece about this in my story called Fighting Cuts, How to Keep Librarians in Schools. So the little thing that I'm talking about here, you know, the little blurb is right from the article. But the first thing really is to advocate. You got to start telling your story. Librarians, we are not the greatest about telling our own story. We like to stay in the background. We don't really like to, you know, shine. We like to have our students shine, the books shine. We don't like to tell our own stories. So people don't realize what we do all day. Honestly, guys, everybody thinks we sit around reading books and eating bonbons all day. I swear to God that everybody thinks it's like the easiest job in the world to be a librarian. And it's not. And we know that. So you need to start promoting. Show what you are doing. Tweet it. Please tweet it, blog about it, post on Instagram, contact that local media, tell your story, invite your parents, invite your superintendent, invite your principal into your schools to tell them to show them what's going on. If you look at my Twitter account, you will see that almost every day I am posting something that is going on in my library. And those posts, my superintendent seeing it, my principal seeing it, it's going on the front page of our website because I'm using the hashtag all in for the bill. It's going, which leads to parents and others seeing what's going on. So when that stuff happens, it's harder for them to be like, oh yeah, we should cut the library. They're not doing anything anyway, because you can show what you've been doing. So you need to start advocating. And I know that's hard. And I know that's something we don't like to always do, but you got to tell your story, because if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell your story and they're not going to tell it properly. So you got to be the one who's telling that story and advocating. So that's tip number 1, advocate. The second tip is to start paying attention. Around this time of year in New Jersey, and I think most states, but I'm talking about my experience in New Jersey. In New Jersey, around February-ish, January, February-ish, is when the school budget starts to be discussed by the school boards. They start to do budget workshops. They start to talk about things. That's when you start to, if you go to board meetings and you start listening to these workshops, you'll start to get clues on what they are thinking they are going to cut. It usually isn't a complete surprise. If you are going to these workshops, if you're listening, if you're looking at all the documents, a lot of school districts post stuff, their agendas and their meeting notes online. Start reading those to figure out what's going on, because if you know ahead of time that this might happen, you can start advocating before it even gets to the point where they have already made those cuts, or it's that last meeting and they have to vote on the budget and there's problems. You want to know as much as you can, you want to know ahead of time. So start paying attention as soon as possible for that. Third tip, become a budget expert. I know that is scary. I am telling you, I, as a librarian who is not great at math at all, like I swear to God, I am, you ask my students, I am not the greatest at math, but I have learned through watching enough board meetings, talking to friends that are, you know, the business administrators in school districts, to understand what's going on at the budget. And because of that, it helps me to understand where money is, where money isn't, and how that money is allocated. Because I'm telling you, most schools have money. It's just, where do they prioritize that money? So are they spending it on consultants? Are they spending it on a new football field? Are they spending it on, I don't know, their, you know, new textbooks? How is that money being allocated? So if you understand that, it can help you if they decide that they want to cut some things. And I know it can be confusing, but it's something that's going to really help you when it comes time to potentially have to fight for it. So the last little thing I'm going to talk about for this section right now, and this is considered like before you get cut, is how do you find your allies? There are people out there that love libraries. Lots of people. Do you have administrators? Are there parents? Are there other educators? Students? Those are gonna be the people that you really wanna be talking for you. The school boards, while they love you, they are expecting you as the librarian to be like, don't cut my position. But if you have stories from your students that can be like, you know, the library is my safe space, that, you know, Mrs. Malespina is always there to help me, that she has found me that right book, that now, you know, even people that have graduated that come back and talk and be like, I have now become a school librarian because of the work that, you know, because of the libraries. If you have parents, especially parent volunteers, if there are parent volunteers, they can be extremely helpful to you. If there are educators that can talk, other staff members that can talk about how valuable the library is to the school, that's going to help you. And if there are administrators who are willing to speak up and say, without my library, you know, my school is not complete, that is going to help you. Also, remember, there are probably school board members that understand the value of the library, but it might just be that one voice or two voices and in a sea of like 8 or 9 school board members. So start to talk to them individually, because what can happen, and this is what I did, is I had some that then went and spoke on my behalf in those closed session meetings, or you know, started to push the other board members to realize that we really need to keep those librarians. Also, members of the public, the community, find those allies. Those are so important and are going to help you so much when that time comes that you might need to use them. So this is where John's going to step in and talk to you a little about when cuts are proposed, how EveryLibrary and School Librarians org can make a difference. And let me tell you, I'm just going to do a little aside for a second. Having SaveSchoolLibrarians.org and EveryLibrary, when I started my fight, They made a huge, huge difference in the fight for South Orange Maplewood. And I'll go and tell you my story in a little bit, but I want John to talk for now.
Sure. Next slide up there for me, if you would.
So, John, are you good? Oh, next slide. Okay.
Yes, please. So, EveryLibrary, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we have two different aspects of what we do. On the one hand, we work on local public library elections, you know, the referendums and the bonds and the millages and the levies and the warrant articles and the parcel taxes that fund public libraries. We also do a fair amount of work in support of the funding of public libraries and school libraries with our partners in different state library associations and state school library associations. It's pretty fun. The Save School Librarians initiative that we started back in July of last year, it was an outgrowth of our, well, when people like Elissa called us and said, we need help. We need help negotiating with our school board, with our recalcitrant superintendent, with principals that might be a little difficult. So we set up Save School Librarians to do a few key things. And I'm going to take you through it, not just from the like the turnkey approach of doing digital advocacy, but we're here as people who've been through it before to help you in your district or school personally. It's the fact that there's no one right way to do it. Elissa's school is very different than yours is. Some districts are big, some are small, some are rural, some are urban, some are suburban, some are exurb, some are on the way up, some are on the way down. I want to talk to you, my colleague Patrick, as well. Okay, next slide, please.
Next slide is there for you.
All right. When Elissa talked about finding your allies, I want to give you some thought-provoking opportunities, perhaps. And I want to ask you to start with a question. Who else cares? Who else cares in your community is not just about whether the library is open for their own kids. And it's got to be bigger than just their own kids. I don't disagree for a moment with what you had to say a moment ago, Elissa, but it's also like, how do you get bigger than just, well, the library people, just the people who like the library? Well, who else cares in your community? Well, about what? Okay, who else cares about pre-K and school readiness? There's a continuum of library services in your community, and that school readiness includes getting ready for school every day for kids in K-12. Who else cares about grade level reading and might not understand that the 21st century school library is embedded in reading at grade level and bringing kids up to grade level, especially special populations? Who else cares about before and after school, because you are the largest classroom, and you are the largest classroom that's probably open the most hours? Who else cares about summertime? Because if you can help launch a kid into a successful summer and help, well, catch them after the summer slide, those folks who care about kids wandering around aimlessly in the summertime would really like to have that place available at the end of the summer. Who else cares about a livable community? And a livable community is a strong school. A strong school, as we know from every study that's been done anywhere, includes a school library staffed by a certified school librarian. Who else cares about a livable community? You have to draw that straight line for them about how the school library, the largest classroom in the school, supports that livable community. Who else cares about workforce development and a kid who isn't just, well, being taught to the test? Who isn't being taught just to the test means that there's individual discovery. It means that there's all the stuff that a school librarian does. Who else cares about at-risk populations? Folks, you got to line this up before the cuts happen, because when the cuts do come down, well, those allies that you reach are your partners in a coalition to reverse those cuts, either to your position or to your budget. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Communicate effectively. And it starts with the facts, folks. The tips on this, and Elissa's article in School Library Journal has got some more very practical things about this. I'm going to talk really high level. As she said before, the budget is often opaque. And it's often opaque even to those folks who are the insiders. The number of library board, or sorry, of school board meetings where a consent agenda rules the day means that nobody's really read the darn packet before it came out, and they're not really, well, the devil's in the details, and they don't want to see the devil. You have to be that person. The facts are your best friend, but they're also your worst enemy, though, folks. It's your worst enemy because someone else has a set of facts, too. And hopefully it's not another department that's trying to fight for limited resources. But if it is, you need to stand on the truth of what you do, and that those statistics and stories that Elissa was talking about, there's a group of people who are stakeholders in every community who are statistics people, and your statistics need to be brought to the fore just as much as the stories about how you helped somebody read or discover or learn or grow. The statistics are important in the same way that, well, the baseball, somebody's a big fan of baseball, somebody's a big fan of hockey, somebody's a big fan of basketball, whatever, lacrosse. They want to know what the stats are, but they also want to know about the heart of the player and how the team dug in. You got to give them that information about the stats that you did, your department did across a big school district or just one or two buildings. And then talk about the heart of the player, which is yours. And if I can say this really honestly, nobody cares about your backstory. This is a good conversation to have amongst us. We're here as colleagues. Elissa's backstory drives this whole conversation today. But if you're going to try and talk to somebody at a cocktail party, buttonhole them after a meeting, have a conversation on Sunday morning or Wednesday evening, they're not going to want the whole backstory. You got to organize and present your facts about what you do for a living for those kids that those other people also care about, not necessarily their own kids, in a way that is about what they care about. Next slide, please.
Okay, we're there.
The next spokesperson or two. Finding a spokesperson or two. Having somebody speak on your behalf, I highly encourage it, and yet the best spokesperson is not a generic spokesperson. There is no poster child for the school library. The best spokesperson might actually be, well, you might have several, because this best spokesperson is the person who is closest to that individual or group of individuals you are trying to affect or persuade or engage. The closest to, you have to be, well, if you're going out to talk to somebody about livable communities, if you're going out to talk to somebody about workforce development, if you're talking to somebody about grade level reading, if you're talking to somebody about, well, the whole life of the child, and those band parents or those sports parents don't quite understand it, your spokesperson is going to have to be equipped to speak band parent or sport and best emissary for another kind of context. You also have to be willing to speak up on your own behalf. The best spokesperson for you is you. There is this tendency in library advocacy trainings to say that if we can only get somebody else to speak up on our behalf, everything will be magically taken care of. The good people who want to be your spokesperson, you have to empower them. You have to empower them with information, yes, but nobody is going to speak up on your behalf unless you ask them to, unless you give them permission to. There are people waiting in the wings right now who want to speak up on your behalf who don't want to screw it up. They don't want to mess it up. They don't want to do the wrong thing. They are not experts. You are. So to be the best spokesperson is to tell them what you need them to do. And then if you ask them to do that, don't let them wander. I beg you, don't let them wander. If you let them wander and you don't continue to support them, they're going to drift. They're going to move away. They're going to stop being your spokesperson. They're going to stop being your advocate, or they're going to make stuff up because they feel obliged. And it is up to you to continue to manage your spokespeople. Next one, please. All right. The last big tip, the last strategic tip that I've got for you tonight is to apply pressure. And Elissa's article talks a lot about applying pressure in her community, and it's a great series of very practical examples. Let me tell you at a high level, there's 4 kinds of pressure. But fundamentally, you have to know when to apply the pressure. Elissa talked a moment ago about when. In the budget process, when are the hearings happening? When are the meetings taking place? When are the closed sessions happening? If you're trying to apply pressure at the wrong point in the timeline, you will fail for one of 2 reasons. It might be illegal or impossible for them to take action because they've already done something previously, and that's not the regular order of that school board. Or you might be applying pressure out of sequence and looking like you don't know what you're doing. It'll potentially be irrelevant or even destructive for you to apply pressure outside of the timeline. So for you to become an expert in how that board does its work, you have to be. And there's 4 kinds of pressure: digital, And we're going to talk about safeschoollibrarians.org a little bit more later on. And I'm going to say to you honestly, change.org petitions do not build your political power. You don't get to retain anybody's information. You don't get to do a one-on-one contact with them if they sign some change.org type petition.
I'll step in for a second here.
Go ahead.
At the beginning, before Save School Librarians came out, we were like, I was basically one of their first cases. We did a change.org petition because there wasn't anything else.
Right.
So I did it. I got like 700 signatures, but my school board was like, there's people from not around our area. They sort of just blew it off because it didn't really get, it didn't have that political power. When we used schoollibrarians.org, because we used that for like the second part of it, they were getting emails because it would email every member of the school board, and it would email every, like the superintendent. They got so many emails that it almost shut down their email server. Mm-hmm. When you're close to shutting down an email server, it goes a lot more way to applying that pressure than a change.org petition where they're only seeing like a number, and it's not really fully affecting them, like their phone going off every 2 minutes when an email is sent to them. So, that's right. So I just wanted to throw that in there because we were just, talking about that.
Oh, totally. I appreciate you bringing that up, the real life example up. And it always has to be timely. It always has to be timely. Otherwise, it looks like we're a bunch of jerks. So we want to work with you on that to time it right. We did it for you, Elissa, and I'm glad we did. Likewise, the in-person pressure that needs to be applied. There's sometimes some theater involved in advocacy and activism. Everybody showing up at the school board meeting wearing T-shirts or having a piece of tape over their mouths or carrying signs. Again, it's got to be in the right sequence, and you don't want it to look like you are doing theater for the sake of theater. The in-person pressure is also that one-on-one spokesperson talking to the folks they know, the person closest to. Then there is the backroom pressure. Decisions are made, yes, in public at open meetings, and yet there are closed sessions. Decisions are made in open meetings in public, and yet there is a negotiation that takes place way beforehand sometimes. The backroom pressure on any of these budget negotiations is almost always the most important thing. Digital pressure supports decisions that are made behind closed doors, in the back room. In-person pressure, that theater of advocacy creates a political environment where somebody says we're responding to the will of the voters, we're responding to the will of the parents, we're responding to the will of the community. Likewise, the pressure that comes in on the media side, it could be coming from both sides, that sort of like coverage in the newspaper, but the op-ed or the advocacy commercial or the closed circuit of digital advocacy that we can help you with. I'd like to consider not just having newspaper coverage as being a litmus test and a gold standard, but to have an op-ed kind of environment, an advertorial kind of environment that moves your messaging forward. Again, knowing when to do it in the sequence of things, though, is the difference between, well, success and potentially failure. Next slide, please. I want to come back around to what we do. And this is not a commercial for EveryLibrary and our Safe School Librarians program in a for-hire kind of way. Everything that we did it with Elissa. We're doing it right now in Atlanta. We just wrapped up a big thing in Marin County where we restored a bunch of positions. We're in the field right now for free, pro bono. We do this because of support from folks like Follett Learning. We do it with support from donors around the country. Rosen Publishing is a big supporter of our school librarian efforts as well. We put money to work on all of that digital advocacy. We put money to work advertising to reach people who live in your district. And it's a big deal because breaking through the noise, breaking through the clutter, yes, the competencies of all these different techniques, we've been there with school districts exactly like yours. And the money that we can put to work that comes from our donor base, I want to talk about that because it is a unique approach to doing this sort of advocacy work. And we want to do it again and again and again where it's Well, where it's timely, where it's possible. Okay, next slide. I just want to remind everybody that we're going to be taking questions on Twitter. Elissa's going to be diving in, but if you can use the ISTE Lib hashtag, I'm going to start looking at the Twitter feed, Elissa, while you wrap us up, okay?
I'm going to tell you a few more tips and tricks. So what if cuts happen? How do you fight back? So first thing is you contact school, Save School Libraries and EveryLibrary, because it wasn't really until I got them involved that I really started to see the change happen. And I was really one of their, as I already mentioned before, sort of one of their first schools that they worked with. And it happened because of all of the things that we just discussed is the ways that I fought back. So this is a huge one. And this is one that is a little uncomfortable at times, but it's something that you guys, we need to talk about and we need to be honest about, because it does happen. A lot of times school districts cut a librarian because of the person and not because of the position. So they sometimes will be like, you know what, I gotta get rid of, I have to, I gotta save money. We have to make cuts. If this person isn't doing a great job as a librarian because they're underperforming, they sometimes get cut. And it happens. But what you need to do, and if you know that to be the case, then you can't go around and be like, you know what, we need to keep Miss Malespina because she's so awesome, when really, honestly, Miss Malespina is not so awesome. Miss Malespina hasn't adjusted or changed to the times. Miss Malespina is still that old school zombie librarian that Jennifer Lagarde talks about. That's not going to really help your case. But what you can do if that is the situation is make it very clear to the school boards that you should never cut a position because of a person. A position you can't, because it makes it very hard to get that position back if you are having to, if you lose it. So they need to realize that you shouldn't be cutting a position because of a person. You can get rid of a person. There are ways to get rid of a person, but don't cut the position. And there's ways that school boards can do it where they can rename the position or go about it in a different manner that they can still keep their librarian. And that's what you need to be honest with and talk to the school board and administration if you know that to be the case. And I know that's hard, and I know that, is a little sticky situation, but if you're fighting, you got to do it that way sometimes. So the second step is you got to continue to monitor the budget closely. So say we are cut, and they cut it, and they cut a line. Then you got to be really looking at things and be like, I became, and it's true, what I said here in this quote is very important. I became I was looking at every expense they made, everything that they were spending money for. And we were bringing in consultants like crazy. And I was always like, wait, you got $150,000 for these consultants, but you're telling me you don't have enough money for a school librarian? That doesn't make sense to me. I kept pushing at them. I was going through the point where I was going back years and saying how much we have spent on consultants. And if we just cut that, we should be able to afford librarians. You got to look line for line and start asking questions about things. And if they're trying to add things, you're going to be like, but you just told me I didn't have enough money for a librarian. You got to keep pushing that point. So the other one is you got to focus on long-term solutions. Individual communities, I know that this happens, and this is another one that people don't always love when I talk about this, but we got to be honest here. there are parents and community organizations and the PTA. When cuts happen, and this happened in my son's district, we were lucky. People stood up and they were like, you know what? We're going to form this organization that's going to be like called like South Orange Maplewood Friends of the School Libraries. That was like the people that usually fund, you know, like the Friends of the Public Library organizations were like, here, we'll do something for the school libraries because now the school libraries don't have any money for books. So we'll step up and we'll give some money for that. And the PTAs at some of the schools were like, I'm going to step up and we're going to give the library money. Well, guess what? We in my community, and I'm telling you, it happens in almost every community, we have some schools that have a lot of money and that are that the parents can raise money for. And we have other schools that they can't get as much money for raising outside public funds. And so what was happening is you're getting inequities in funding, and that should never occur. We can't say that, one school, it should never be that one school has enough money for books for their libraries because their parents can raise the money and another school doesn't. That's why you have to be able to fund the school. That's why school districts fund libraries and give them all the same amount of money, because not everything is equal. If you were to do it just from parent organizations or individual community organizations. You also can't rely on those organizations year after year to be able to step up and fund them. So instead of these well-meaning groups, giving money, what you need to start saying is, I'd rather you come to the school board meeting and really pressure them and explain to them that this isn't the right way to do things, that this is inequities, and this can't continue to occur. So while in the short term, it might be awesome that these parent groups and organizations can fund you, it's not a long-term solution. So you have to get them to continue to pressure the board to make changes. The last one is, and this is a big one, and this is one that I know all too well, is you really got to develop a thick skin, because I was slammed. Things got ugly. People online, people that were my friends, they started to try to discredit me because of the fight I was putting on. I say this all the time, and I jokingly say this, but it's sort of true, is I'm well known and respected out in the library world community for what I do. But if you in my community ask, like, how is Elissa? I'm not as well respected because things got a little ugly and I had to alienate people when I was fighting for what I knew was right. For me, I alienated some of the arts people, because what happened in my community is when the middle school librarians got cut, they said it was because they didn't have enough money. And at the same time that they cut the middle school librarians, they opened up and made a dance position that had not been part of the district for more than 15 years. So I got up there and I said, you know what? I love dance. I think dance is awesome. I want our students to be exposed to it. But you can't tell me that you have enough money for dance teachers when you're telling me you don't have enough money for a librarian position. When I had all these people who came to you and expressed that that they wanted a librarian. And when you and I, when the school board was saying that you didn't have enough money and that's why the position got cut. Well, once we did that, once I embarrassed them, that's when things changed, because they could no longer justify the reasoning behind the cut. So guess what happened? We didn't get a dance teacher, but we got our librarians back. And I hated to have to do that. But I knew that what was best for our students, because we all know that the librarian library is the biggest classroom in the school, and that what is going to affect most students is a librarian, is was justifiable to fight for that over a dance teacher that might not have met and had as much impact on all the students. Do I love doing that? No, I hated it. And things got ugly. And Heather Lister, who I worked with and, helped mentor when she was fighting things, was like, Liz, things are not they're really going these people are really getting mean and saying some nasty things. And you just got to learn to develop a thick skin and realize that what you are doing, is best for the students and for the teachers in the district, even if people are going to try to say things otherwise. And I know that's hard. So we are basically at the end of our sort of tips and tricks. I'm hoping that you guys really learned something tonight, because I did. I'm hoping that we can help you. If you have any questions or comments, or your school district is in crisis right now, use that ISTELib hashtag. We're going to be monitoring it. We'll be asking questions. And then, but you read an article that is on fighting the cuts that's in School Library Journal right now. It's in April's issue. It's also online. That, gives you some more tips and tricks on how to help you. But we are here to help you.
That's right, Elissa. So Wanda Rundle did comment and says that librarians and advocates also need to fight for funding for resources and library programs, as well as retention of librarian positions. I totally agree. There's something you said a moment ago about the donors that are interested in supporting the school library program, but not backfilling what should be done with regular funding. And I think it's a key thing. Hey, Elissa, can you go back up one to make sure that go back one slide to see that the hashtag's there? Yeah. I don't know a single donor that wants to do something that should be taken care of in the regular budget. They would like to see their money go to add capacity, to do innovative and interesting things, and for you to be able to help them understand that the budget should be taking care of the basics is for you to tell the truth about the budget and the basics. So, yeah. We might not have a lot of questions tonight, Elissa, and that's totally cool. EveryLibrary is here to participate in this conversation. What do you want to do? Should we press on, or should we hold for another moment and see if anybody else wants to?
I think what we're going to do is if you guys have questions after listening to this, because a lot of times people watch these, we've looked at the numbers and we see that a lot of people watch them not fully live.
Lovely. But
in fact, is just use the ISTELib hashtag and ask your questions to us whenever you have a chance. We are here to help you.
That's right.
We also archive these, so you can go back and watch them at any time. So we do have some more in our series. We have a few more webinars coming up. So if you want to talk about that, John.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks to Follett for supporting this series. If you can hit the next slide. It's a real pleasure. It's a pleasure for EveryLibrary to be partnering with the ISTE Librarians Network. Elissa, you want to tell people about how they can get more involved?
You can get more involved still to the end of this month through ISTE Network. If you go to the ISTE website, we have calls for volunteers out, and you can find more information on our website, which is librariansnetwork.weebly.com. So we are looking for people to join and be part of the ISTELib team. So if there are any volunteers till the end of the month, we're looking for that. But, just go to our website. We have our webinars available. We have other stuff. We are going to be all throughout ISTE. We have stuff almost every day at ISTE. EveryLibrary is going to be joining us at ISTE this year, which is awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be great fun. In fact, we have just to save the date, folks. I don't have a place for us yet. But to save the date, we're going to do an EveryLibrary ISTE Librarians Network party on Tuesday, June 26th at 6 p.m. Central Time near the Convention Center in Chicago.
Yay! I can't wait for that.
I know.
I can't wait. A lot of fun. So we have that going on, but find us at ISTE. It's a great time. So we do have a next webinar coming up, and this one John can talk to you a little about.
Sure. Actually, my colleague Patrick Sweeney, who some of you might know, he's one of our EveryLibrary co-founders. He's our political director. Is going to be joining us on August 6th. It's a Monday at 7 o'clock Central to talk about power mapping. This is the term in the political sciences that leads to all coalitions and partnerships. Power mapping is, well, the school ecosystem, your band parents, your arts parents, your whole life of the child approach, and your broader community. Those folks who care about livable communities, who care about grade level reading, who care about all those other things we mentioned before. He's going to take you through a very practical set of tips on a very practical exercise, I should say, about how to get to your superintendent, your principal, your board, and new funding partners through this power mapping exercise. It's part of laying the groundwork before you need it.
Which is awesome and something that I'm really interested in learning more about, because that's not something I understand enough about. And so I'm really interested and excited about this webinar.
Patrick's he's a great resource for this. So you guys are going to have fun with him.
So that's it. Thank you guys for attending us. You can visit us anytime at schoollibrarians.org or at info@everylibrary.org.
SaveSchoolLibrarians.org.
Sorry, SaveSchoolLibrarians.org. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Or at info@everylibrary.org, or ISTE Librarians Network. Go to our website and find me on Twitter, and I'll answer any questions for you. Thank you guys again. I am gonna get out of this, and I'm gonna try to go back to unscreen share us. And there I am again. So thank you guys, everybody, for the people who joined us live. And, any questions, just use the ISTELib hashtag. Thank you again, John. This was an incredible night and, great webinar. So good night, everybody. I'm going to stop the podcast now. Bye.